Hello Resi drivers, welcome back to yet another video. In this video I want to talk about some of the things that you may have heard about life abroad that may seem like a myth. These are things when you hear someone say these things, you're like, this doesn't make sense. How can this be? So these are the things I want to talk about in this video, and you'll understand why, even though these things sound as if they don't make sense or sound as if they are untrue, they actually turn out to be true. Now, the first myth that I want to talk about is the fact that you will feel like a foreigner everywhere. Whether you're abroad in the UK or whether you go to Zimbabwe, you're going to feel like a foreigner. This sounds like a myth, but in actual fact, it is true. Now, I'm going to break it down why it feels like, or it sounds like a myth. It sounds like a myth because the assumption is that, remember, I'm talking about you will feel like a foreigner everywhere, whether you're in Zimbabwe or whether you're in the UK. Whether you're in Kenya, whether you're in the UK, you insert the country where you come from. First of all, it sounds like a myth because, the assumption is, I am from Zimbabwe, right? Therefore, I should feel more at home. When I go back to Zimbabwe, I should have this sense of comfort, sense of belonging, because I'm going back to Zimbabwe, a country that gave birth to me, my homeland, where I was born, where I went to school, where I grew up. Therefore, I'm supposed to feel more at home there. How can I feel like a foreigner? It doesn't make sense, right? But in actual fact, this is true. It is true because as the years go by, living abroad, experiencing things in a different land, those experiences are going to shape the way you see life. They are going to broaden your horizon, so to speak. They are going to shape your worldview. They are going to shape your opinions. They are going to shape your behaviors and your preferences, how you look at life in general. So while you're experiencing these changes, while you're evolving like that, guess what? Life at home is also evolving without you. Life goes on without you back home. Because here's the thing, when you go back home, you find that a lot has changed. There are cultural changes, cultural shifts that happen in your absence. You find that there's now new slang. There are now new ways of talking. People have developed a new understanding that you're not familiar with. New trends have developed, trends that connect people there, that when you go, you experience this culture shock. You don't have a clue what they're talking about. You don't have a clue what is going on. You don't know how to navigate the challenges that people are facing. But what I've experienced is when I go back home, I find that people have developed ways of navigating these challenges that we are currently talking about. People have developed their own ways of dealing with that. And here you are coming from the UK. You're coming and you see things through a different lens. And you get confused. You have no idea what is going on. You will feel like a foreigner, even though that is your homeland, the country that gave birth to you. You will feel like a foreigner. You are bound to experience that reverse culture shock. Some of the things that felt normal before will no longer feel normal to you because you've been away from the country for so long. Some of the things that happen might feel inconvenient. Some of the social norms might feel strange. Political issues, you may not understand what is going on. So a lot would have changed over the years. So when you go there, you still have got this view in your mind that is no longer a reality in your own homeland. So this is why you will feel like a stranger, even though that is the country that gave birth to you. Another thing as well is that friends and relatives might see you differently. This one, for me, this one is a major one. Because you find that, as you go to meet people, greet people, interact, you find you have changed so much, and people have also changed. You no longer see things the same way. You operate on different wavelengths. Some people might expect you to be rich or richer or wealthier, and they may not understand why you're not as wealthy as they expect. Some people will understand, some people will be friendly, some people not so friendly. You will meet people who will welcome you differently. So now we come to feeling like a foreigner abroad. You always feel like a foreigner because those cultural differences will always remind you that, you know what, you are different. You are an outsider. There are bound to be differences that will always be that constant reminder. Because despite integrating into your new environment, despite, understanding the culture, the traditions, there will always be something to remind you that, you know what, you are not from around here. You will never feel fully local. Your accent will always remind you you're not from around here. Your skin color will always remind you you're not local. The stereotypes will always remind you you're not local. The list goes on. So because of these things, you always feel like a foreigner, whether you are abroad or whether you're home. So you can imagine the emotional toll the psychological consequences of this. I mean, this makes you feel, sometimes you feel kind of lost, like you're caught between two worlds, like you don't really know where you belong unless you know how to handle this situation properly. This is where I give my suggestions. I'm just going to give them in point form. So what I would say when it comes to this situation, which can be a little bit of a conundrum for most people, is that you must shift the narrative. Instead of looking at yourself as being caught between two worlds, look at yourself as a global citizen. Look at yourself as someone who is enjoying the best of both worlds, somebody who's got two homes and who has been able to make a home away from home. Otherwise, this situation will play on your psyche. It will do a number on your mental health. So yeah, shift the narrative. Another way to look at this is the fact that feeling like a foreigner everywhere is a sign of growth, it's a sign of courage, it's a sign that you were brave enough to take yourself out of your comfort zone, to go to that foreign land and change in the ways that you've changed. And I would like to believe that, or I would like to think that that change is a positive one. It means you've expanded beyond your borders. You've pushed yourself and now you're part of something bigger. I don't know what you think about this one. As always, feel free to chip in the comment section. The second and last myth that I want to address is the fact that living abroad will make you feel more African than when you are at home. Now, I want to repeat that. Living abroad will make you feel more African than when you are back in Africa. Now, when you listen to this statement, it doesn't make sense, does it? Like, how can living abroad make you feel more African than when you live at home? Maybe back in Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, and so on. This sounds like a complete myth because the expectation is that when you relocate or when you move abroad, you're going to assimilate into the culture, you're going to take on the culture of that environment, and that over time, your African identity is going to fade or it is going to become less relevant. Of course, it is a given that when you relocate, you're going to assimilate into your new environment. I mean, you have to, if you want to thrive in that environment. That one is a given. I've explored that topic several times on this channel. So we know that. However, according to my experience and from what I've heard speaking to other immigrants, what I've heard or what has come to light is the fact that living in a foreign country just serves to highlight our cultural differences. Yes, while we assimilate, we have assimilated and we have embraced the new culture. I mean, I speak for myself when I say that. When I see British people embrace their culture, honoring their culture, and just preserving it the way they do, it actually makes me appreciate my own culture even more. I'm actually learning from the British people, seeing the way they move, how they fight to preserve their culture. It also makes me appreciate my own culture. Another thing as well is that living in a foreign country makes you realize just how unique your own culture is. If you're an African or if you come from another country, living in a country that is not your country of origin just highlights these cultural differences, from the food you eat, your language, to the values. And because you now have this awareness, that can actually motivate you to actively seek out communities where you get to participate in speaking your language, eating your food, and just practicing your traditions and so on. Because they are now scarce in that foreign land. So you develop this craving of wanting to experience your own culture. Another thing as well is that being away from home often makes people nostalgic. When you are nostalgic, you start to miss those things that you grew up experiencing, things that you grew up knowing, and so on. This often leads to someone reflecting deeply on their past experiences, on their own culture. What was special about that culture? What was special about those experiences? And as you reflect, you develop a deep appreciation of those experiences. You treasure those experiences because now you no longer have easy access to those experiences. You no longer have easy access to the food that you grew up eating. You no longer have easy access to those practices that you had back home. I say you no longer have easy access because if you live in a foreign country, you have to make an effort to go and buy food that tastes like home. For example, where I live right now, if I want to eat the food that tastes like home, if I want to have my sadza, if I want to have my rape, that vegetable, I have to drive to a particular street for me to get that food. So you have to make a bit of an effort. The same goes for community. If you want to experience the songs, the dance, I mean, here we have the Zimfest every summer. So you have to seek out the communities if you want to have that experience. So yeah, that drives you to do that. And it's because of that appreciation that you develop when you live abroad, because now you miss it. The last thing I want to mention on this point is the fact that when you live abroad, you feel a sense of obligation, a sense of duty to want to represent your country, your culture. And this serves to strengthen the connection that you have with your homeland. So this is why when people say, actually, living abroad makes you feel more African than you felt at home, seems like a myth, but these are the reasons why it turns out to be true. So I don't know what you think about this one. As always, feel free to chip in the comment section.